Yes, good afternoon. Hello, well, it could be afternoon. You might be watching this at night. Welcome to another show of Citizens for Progress, New Hampshire Citizens for Progress. We're expanding a little bit more to cover a larger area of New England. And today's show is going to be about the climate emergency we're facing. It's real important that we try to reduce the amount of temperature this planet increases by so that we can live a normal life and proceed healthy for our grandkids and our kids. So I got a couple of people that are involved in a direct action. This is a utility strike, and we're going to ask them what they're doing and what it means. And well, let's start.
Wonderful. My name is Sonja Birthisel. I'm an environmental scientist by training, and I'm taking direct action and have been for about a year now to try to do more to stop climate change. I've been working through the academic channels, and that frankly is going too slowly. We need to do more, and so I'm part of the No Coal, No Gas campaign, and our current target is to shut down the last big coal plant in New England, which is the Merrimack Generating Station in Bow, New Hampshire. So the strike that we're talking about today is part of that long-term campaign to shut down this coal plant.
And my name is Robert Laraway. I am from Tilton, New Hampshire, and I'm also a part of the No Coal, No Gas campaign. Sonja wrote me in about a year ago, and I've just been trying to help in whatever way I can to support the work of organizers and others who are participating in this, really acting out of conscience and really trying to do some good for this world.
So the actions that have taken place, we had bucket by bucket, and that was a direct action at the Bow Power Plant. Then from there it was multi-states in New England that blocked the coal trains on their delivery to Bow Power Plant. And that was last year, and now we're into this year. We're going to be doing a utility strike. How does this work?
That's absolutely right. So this Bow Power Plant is kept in business by what amounts to subsidies to the tune of $188 million over the course of a 5-year period. And we don't think that we should be using subsidies to subsidize technologies of the past that are causing climate change and contributing to respiratory distress. We think subsidies should be things that are used for the common good.
Rob, do you have any more on these subsidies?
Yeah, I mean, these, I would say, I think that the number is about 10% of the average New England ratepayer, the bill that we pay for our electricity. 10% of our bill goes to what amounts to fossil fuel subsidies, to the collective tune of about $2.2 billion. And these subsidies that we are paying for are supposed to be for things, as Sonja was saying, that contribute to the public good. But it's increasingly clear that fossil fuels aren't actually in our collective good, in our best interest. So that's why we're striking. So that hopefully, in the face of this climate emergency, we can do what those in power really aren't willing to do.
Yeah, and why strike is really because as electricity ratepayers, as people who are part of this pretty complicated electricity system, our dollars that go toward our bills, that's really one of the few levers that we have to pull on, especially that's safe to do during this time when there's a global pandemic. You know, my friends and I who are part of this campaign, we don't want to be putting first responders at risk by taking our buckets and walking onto coal plant premises and interacting with law enforcement during this time. Going on strike is something that we can all do in our homes that is using our dollars, our voice in this system to demand that it change for the better.
So you must have demands for this. This isn't just an action for the sake of doing it. What are your demands?
Well, the major demand of the No Coal, No Gas campaign is that we close the Merrimack Generating Station in Bow, New Hampshire. It's received over $188 million to run until 2023, as Sonja was mentioning earlier. And this is through subsidies that we're paying for with our utility bills. So that is the first demand, really. And then we also, included in these demands, is to take that money that we're spending and redirect it toward ratepayer relief for the next year and toward green energy projects. So all this money that we're paying for, we can put toward better use.
The specific demands of the strike are that we cancel these subsidies, they're called forward capacity payments, that are funneled through kind of obscure, hidden ways from our ratepayer dollars to fossil fuel companies. Cancel those contracts and use that money for the next year for ratepayer relief. In case you hadn't noticed, we're in the midst of a pandemic and there are lots of people who can't afford to pay their bills right now. It would be great if those people's bills were forgiven. So that's our number one demand. Use money that's going to fossil fuel subsidies for ratepayer relief for people who need help right now. And then once the pandemic is over, in subsequent years, let's use our common funds, let's use that money to invest in the technologies of the future, home energy, wind technology, solar, renewables.
So this forward capacity, they just signed that contract. I believe it's through 2023. So that contract already exists. How often did Bo run this past year? I don't think it ran much.
You're absolutely right. Over the last several years, this Bo power plant has run on average a couple of weeks a year in total. So it's what's considered to be a peaker plant. It runs only during times when energy demand is highest, so in the coldest days of winter and the hottest days of summer, to be providing kind of backup power during those times. And for this service of mostly just sitting around waiting to be needed, we're paying an exorbitant amount of money for it collectively. But we don't need to be using peaker plants, this system that is set up to keep these outdated fossil fuel plants online doesn't need to exist. In Texas, they have a different system for dealing with peak energy demand, where just the part that's needed during peak periods is passed on to ratepayers. And there are new ways of calculating in advance when peak energy demand is likely to occur and preemptively cooling buildings in the heat of summer, for example, so that you're kind of ahead of the curve and ready for when that actual energy peak is needed during the very heat of the day. And so you don't reach that level of needing backup power. So, the know-how exists for how to transition to a better way of doing energy. And what we're lacking is the collective will to get there. In, again, my limited understanding, I'm not an energy specialist, but as an ordinary person, basically, who's developed an interest in this area, this is what I've learned and believe is worth sharing and acting upon.
I was surprised to hear that during the peak electrical days this year that Bo did not go online. I mean, there was a specific day that people that purchase power and on a daily basis to adjust what's going on, that they didn't even have to use Bo.
I'll tell you, Rick, it's almost like we do not need this plant at all.
Describe our energy system here. How's it work? I've been an electrician since 1972, and this stuff in regards to the power, I mean, I worked on places. I've worked on Seabrook Station and upgrading the grid. But a lot of this stuff about where our power comes from, when, is Greek to me, and I've got about 50 years of experience. How can we simplify this so that someone that doesn't have an electrical background understand? I got an electrical background and I barely understand it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that energy across New England is sort of coordinated and monitored through a regional electricity grid by the ISO, the Independent Systems Operator of New England. So they operate mostly through contracts with private companies, and they're in those private power plants, like the Merrimack Generating Station or others across New England. Different regions deal with their energy in different ways, but what we share in common is this, common grid through the ISO, and that is really the group that we mean to target with our demands to say we need to shut down this plant, stop, including the Merrimack generating station, in what we're paying for.
Yeah. We're sort of saying the ISO is the one who's really holding the purse strings to a great extent here. And yes, it will be hard and complicated to change the way that we do energy. And, they have been transitioning toward more renewables and away from coal and gas for years, and we applaud those efforts. But much of the coal and oil has been replaced by natural gas, and we don't think that that's the way of the future. Really, our ISO New England has been too heavily helping to prop up fossil fuels in general, given the state of the climate at this time.
The first step really that we're asking people to take is to go to our website, strikedowncoal.org. It's where you can find a lot of really good information about not only how our energy system works, but also how to take action here. So the first action we're asking for is that people just go to the website and press a very prominent button, a big yellow button labeled strike, exclamation point on it. And when you press that button and fill out the commitment form, you're joining a community across New England that's dedicated to striking down coal. It's a thing of the past. The next step would be, after you've sort of signed that commitment, to stop paying your electricity bill. By collectively withholding our money as ratepayers, we can really sort of challenge where power is currently. We can build power and pressure behind the demands that we're making. And a very important part of that is not just to stop paying your electricity bill, but to mail a letter to your utility company to make sure that they know why you're not doing that, why the payment didn't come in, so that the statement can be made loud and clear.
Yeah, so
Sonja, you want to add anything to that?
I do. So one thing that's really important to me is to acknowledge that we're in an unprecedented situation where there are so many ratepayers across New England who cannot afford to pay electricity bills during this time. And for me, a key motivation is to be in solidarity with those folks. So if you're a person who can't pay your electricity bill right now, strike with us. Send a letter to your utility saying, hey, the fact that 10% of my bill would ordinarily go to fossil fuels is totally wacky. Let's stop that. If you're a person who can pay your bill right now, join in solidarity with those who can't and demand a system that is prioritizing people over profits, that's putting our values first. This change is hard, but we can do this. And so this piece of solidarity is really, I think, important to what we're doing.
So let me see if I got this right. First, go to your website, pledge to take action. Don't pay your electric bill or utility bill, or if you're already in a state that you're not able to pay that bill, mail a letter to the electric supplier that you're using. You could do it to the Public Utility Commissioner, Eversource, just for a couple. Actually,
Yep.
you're also offering a piece of coal to go in that letter. That was from...
You're absolutely right. So we're also inviting people to join what we're calling the Coal Bucket Challenge. So we have some genuine coal from the Merrimack generating station. It was liberated over the course of the last year. And if you would like to be cheeky about your utility bill strike letter, we can send you a packet of coal that you can mail in with your letter to your utility and to the ISO saying, hey, I'm going on strike and here's why.
So included in that letter would be the redistribution of these funds, get rid of the subsidies, and let's have them be renewables, conservation, efficiency, and you also put a date by June 2021 to take this action.
Yeah, so let me back up and clarify that timeline just a little bit. The demands of the strike are, once again, stop paying your bill and demand that for the next year, those forward capacity payments that go to fossil fuels that in the past have held up technologies of the past, cancel those contracts, use that money for ratepayer relief, help people who are hurting during this pandemic. and then starting in June of 2021, assuming that the pandemic is on the wane by then and that the economy is recovering. At that point, we're asking that those subsidies, essentially, those forward capacity payments, let's use that money for renewables at that point in time.
And the last was, well, watch the show and tell your friends.
Watch the show and tell your friends. Yeah. So there's one other really important piece to this. This is a complicated campaign, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here explaining it because there's lots of dimensions to it. But we're asking those who have the means to give an additional donation. Take the amount that you would have put toward your electricity bill. Starting this month in September is when the strike starts, and donate that to an organization that's building up justice in the world. So on our website, under redistribution, you'll see that there's an opportunity to donate to some partners of ours, folks who we know who support this strike and are actively building up justice in the world. And we've chosen to highlight and be building connections with organizations led by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who are being hit first and worst by this pandemic, oftentimes, and who are doing really important work right now.
Yeah, in New Hampshire, for example, the organizations that we're asking people to donate to, if they can, be Black Lives Matter Manchester, Black Lives Matter Nashua, the People's Solidarity Fund, which is actually a group that's helping redistribute people's stimulus checks and other money to those for COVID relief, and the Cowsuck Band of the Pennacook Abenaki people in New Hampshire. So, that's just the New Hampshire groups alone. Whatever state you're in, we've got organizations that, we're pushing people to that are making a real difference right now.
Natural gas makes up a large part of our energy supply, and that's adds carbon to the air as well.
Natural gas, we have a pie chart actually that we can show you right here that sort of breaks down sort of our, where our energy comes from various sources.
Yeah, so this is our regional electricity resource mix, and as you can see, 48.5% comes from natural gas at present. And so we said at the beginning, we're the no coal, no gas campaign. We're going after coal first. That's the dirtiest and the worst. But once we get these coal plants shut down, we're going to continue working to transition away from fossil fuels, including natural gas, and really be creating the future that we need in New England.
So asking people to participate in this utility strike here, this isn't risk-free. People have to understand all aspects of taking place in this action.
You're absolutely right. And as a group of people, our campaign holds people's consent to be really important. One thing that we think is terrible is that without our knowledge or consent, 10% of our electricity bill is going to fossil fuel. And so we see the strike as a way of removing our consent from that system. But it's important. We don't want people to join this strike unless you feel really called to do so. There are risks involved, and this should be an act of conscience. This should be something that you join us in doing if you really believe, as we do, that this is a way to create a better future. Rob, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we should mention again that across New England there are moratoriums on evictions for people who can't pay the utilities right now, and that's part of why this makes so much sense as a tactic right now. That people won't be evicted for this. Now, people might be concerned that when the moratorium gets lifted, you're still going to have to pay those bills again. So, we have recommended that people redistribute these funds if they're able to the organizations that I mentioned before, the Black Lives Matter Manchester, Black Lives Matter Nashua, et cetera, that you can find on our website. But, if you feel like you really need to for yourself and you still want to participate in the strike, put the money away for your in another bank account or something where you know that you're still taking care of yourself. We're not asking people to put themselves out on the street here for this. If you're able, do what you think is right.
Yeah, so I wanted to clarify something you said earlier a minute ago, Rob. I think you said a moratorium on evictions, and I think you meant there are moratoria on electricity shutoffs across most New England states. Yeah, so there are currently moratoria on electricity shutoffs across most New England states, but we're in New Hampshire. I'm in New Hampshire today, and New Hampshire is an exception as of the time of this taping. The moratorium here has lapsed, and there are really good people working to try to get that reinstated, and it's our sincere hope that that happens as a layer of protection for people. But it's important, before you go on strike with us, if you're here in New Hampshire, to double check if that moratorium has been reinstated, and to know that electricity shutoff is a potential risk if that moratorium is not reinstated for you.
Yeah, it's a requirement if you're renting that your apartment that you rented have utilities. And if you don't have utilities, that can be a reason for eviction.
That's exactly right. And so this is not a tactic that will work for all renters. If you're a person who rents an apartment, you should absolutely know that if your landlord is looking for an excuse to get rid of you, they could use failure to pay your electricity bill as just such an excuse. And so if you're a renter, we recommend that you touch base with your landlord, or really consider, do you have the kind of relationship with your landlord where they would be in support of you taking this direct action, and weigh those risks and consequences in how you think about this.
This could also affect people's credit rating as well, besides the potential of eviction due to not having utilities. So you've set up a support system to be able to help people as well, have you not?
What we're committed to, we're just an ordinary group of people. So depending on how many folks join us, we can't commit to paying for everyone's bill. That's beyond what we can in good conscience promise. But what we do promise is that we will work with you to help find a solution. If you go on strike and are unable to pay your bill down the line, we'll try to partner you with an organization that's doing mutual aid in your area, or we'll help you start a Kickstarter. And we promise to be in this in solidarity with you to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, I should mention, I think it's important that we keep in mind, too, that most major change comes with risks. And a lot of people are, in fact, capable of, participating in this strike without doing harm to themselves. A lot of people are capable of participating in this without major risk, but some do. But in order for anything really transformative to happen, I mean, we got to come together and take care of each other with an eye toward the future, and not just the present moment.
There's a way for people to participate, even if they have their electric energy from clean sources or even solar themselves. And what are your suggestions for those people?
So what I will say is this is not a one-size-fits-all tactic. There are lots of ways to be part of this strike. If you're a tenant who decides that you can't go on utility strike, but you really wish you could, still send a letter and some coal saying, hey, I support what these protesters are doing. If you're a person who has solar or is living off the grid, you're already striking. Congratulations. If you support the goals of this strike, send in a letter and some coal saying, hey, I'm in solidarity with these folks. I'm in on this too. There are lots of ways to be involved.
So they could also send funds to the agency, which would help during the process of getting this work done, the printing of materials and other things.
That's exactly right. You, if you feel called to, please make a donation to one of our redistribution partners who are working on direct COVID relief and building up justice in the world today. Again, check out our website for more information on that.
Why? What keeps it going?
Here you go, Bo Cole. Here's $188 million. We're paying you in advance so you can be online to keep our electricity flowing for all of these good people of New England.
And where, some residents and ratepayers wondered, did all that money come from?
Who are you and what are you
Gordon Van Welly, President and CEO of ISO New England. We operate the power grid for the whole region. Our job is to provide you with reliable energy. I help you keep your lights on.
Wait, so you're using our money to help subsidize this coal plant?
That's right. Our mission is to keep the power grid going all the time and to provide and to do that with low cost expenses. So that's why we purchase power from all the different sources that are available.
Yeah, well, here's a question. Why are you not thinking about what the real costs are? Are you thinking about my daughter's asthma? Are you thinking about our medical bills, huh?
Yeah, hey, are you counting the cost that we live in a region with the highest rate of that respiratory disease in the country? And I want to know, are you counting the cost to our planet? This summer was the hottest summer on record. Australia is literally burning. And you're turning a blind eye to pouring more emissions into the atmosphere? Are you counting the cost to our children? Will there be a habitable planet left for them to live on?
Yeah. And tell me this. Are you thinking about what the real costs are? Are you thinking about what we really need to be thinking about in this region? Are you thinking, or do you need our help to see the big picture?
We think that you need to stop using our money to fund fossil fuels. No funding fossil fuels. No funding fossil fuels. Stop funding fossil fuels. No 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 funding fossil fuels.
Well, I want to thank everybody for watching. Be healthy, be safe. See you next time. Take care.
Don't you know you're talking about a revolution? It sounds like a whisper.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.